Hey guys, it's me, ya girl. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Brittany, and sometimes I like to do makeup. So basically what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be doing my makeup. I'm also gonna be telling spooky stories, but let's get down to it. For today, I am going to be telling my own story about a house that we used to have growing up. So it was a summer of 2009. I had just finished my freshman year in high school, and I had moved from San Antonio to Cibolo. I was this angsty little 14-year-old about to be 15. I really didn't want to move. I had grown up in San Antonio. I was literally there since I was 6 years old. We moved into this house in Cibolo. It was probably around like 4 years old. It was literally only had one person that lived in it before. So from the first day that we moved in, I didn't get any weird feelings, honestly. We picked our rooms, and that first night, I literally just went to bed with my door locked and the lights off because I was mad. I made it as dark as possible in my room as I could. So that night, my sister started hearing like weird noises in her bathroom. And so she started hearing like the shampoo bottles falling right at 3 o'clock in the morning. She like went to my room, knocked on my door and was like, hey, like the shampoo bottles are falling. And I'm like, okay, well, we all just took a shower before we went to bed. It's probably like condensation. And she's like, no, it's 3 o'clock, and we all know that's the witching hour. So I was like, it's nothing. This is a brand new house. Like, there was nothing wrong with this house, so just go to bed. And she's like, fine, whatever. I feel something. I was like, okay, you feel things all the time. I feel like it's all in your head, pretty much. Still upset, obviously. So that night, she went back to bed in her own room, and I went back to bed. Nothing else happened. But then she started hearing things coming out of her closet. And it's only her. It was only her experiencing stuff, and no one was believing her. No one. Until one day, it was probably like a month after moving into that house, me and my stepsister were downstairs and we were cooking dinner, and I want to say it was probably like around 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It was still daylight, like bright daylight outside. And my brother, who lived with us, he was wearing black that day. We saw something black run into my stepsister's room. Her room was downstairs, and then the kitchen was across from her room. We go into her room, like calling out for her brother. We're like, hey, please get out of our room, or her room. We couldn't find him. We looked in the closet, he wasn't there. We looked under her bed, he wasn't there. We thought maybe that he had kicked out the screen to her window to jump out. He wasn't there. He was nowhere to be found. So she was like, okay, Brandon, where are you? And we were like yelling for him. We're like, where could you have gone? There was nowhere else for him to go. And we just kept calling and calling, like, where are you? He called from upstairs finally, and we were just like, okay, how did you get up there? And he said, I've been up here. I'm in the bathroom. I've been in the bathroom this whole time. And we're just like, he said he had been there for 2 hours. We didn't know what to think. So honestly, we kind of just decided to forget about it. And I actually did just that. My stepsister, on the other hand, she started realizing that she couldn't sleep. And when she did, she would sleepwalk, or she would have sleep paralysis where she would feel like something's watching her, but she couldn't move. She started sleepwalking, and one night my parents had found her on the floor with a knife in her hand. After the sleep paralysis, after the walking around, one time she says she woke up and she was walking around with a knife in her hand, like hovering over one of us. I can't remember if it was me or my sister, but she was hovering over us, and she just went downstairs and like stayed awake the whole time. So that was happening to my sister or my stepsister, all while my little sister was still hearing things around the house. One night we were hanging out with our neighbor, and she had told us that she knew the people that lived here before us, and she would hang out with them regularly. And I asked her, I was like, hey, so like, did anyone die here? She said, no, like absolutely no one died here. Like, no, that's ridiculous. And I was like, okay, well, because we have like strange things going on in the house, we can't explain them. And she's like, well, there was this one time we used your room to play with the Ouija board. And I was like, yeah, don't tell me that. Did you at least close it correctly? And she's like, what do you mean by that? I mean, we said goodbye. I was like, I don't know what that means. Did you make sure you said like a prayer or something? Like say, don't come into this house? Like, no, we didn't do that. Okay, well maybe the things that we're hearing are real. A few years passed. I didn't feel anything. My sister continued to feel things. Sometimes when I was doing homework, I would feel like something was watching me downstairs at the dinner table. Nothing too big. One night though, I felt kind of like a weird shift, and it wasn't just me. Like my own mother, who is a skeptic about stuff like that, felt it too. And I had woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning that day, or that night, to something standing in front of my bed. It was a dark entity like this, crouched in front of my bed, and I was like, oh wow, that's cool. That happened every night almost until the day that we moved out. And my grandmother had come to visit us shortly before we moved out, and the night that she stayed with us, she said that she kept having dreams about this little boy in blue coming to her side of the bed and saying, hey, like help me, like follow me, help me. And she's like, I can't help you. She just said, I can't help you, there's nothing I can do but pray for you. And she prayed for the little boy, but she's like, I'm pretty sure that's not gonna help anything. And she's like, I do not feel like that little boy was an actual little boy. I think that was a demon in disguise. She just kept having that dream with the little boy until one night she woke up and that little boy was for real by her bed. She said that he had dark eyes and he didn't look so friendly anymore. So she woke up and she was like, no, get out of this house. You don't belong here. And she started praying, and she prayed for the rest of the night. She just decided like, okay, well, I'm gonna dip out now. There's nothing I can do but pray for y'all. And that's what she did. She just prayed, and for a little bit, nothing really happened for maybe like 3 days. Until one night my sister woke up again at the same time, and she's like, hey Britt, can I sleep in your room? And she said when she walked past my room, she saw me sitting up in bed, and I was sitting up in bed like this. And she was just like, hey, can I sleep in your room? And I was still like this. And she's like, is that a yes or a no? And I slowly turned to her, and then I looked back, just staring at my wall. And she's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna sleep here now. I guess 10 minutes later, I woke up and I said, what are you doing in my room? Like, how did you get into my room? My door's locked. And she's like, no, your door was not locked. It was wide open. And you said I can sleep here. I was like, no, I didn't say any of that. She's like, actually, you didn't. But I asked you, you were sitting up and you didn't say no. So here I am. And I was like, what do you mean I was sitting up? And she's like, you were sitting up and you were just looking at your wall like a freak. And I'm like, okay, and you're still sleeping in here? She's like, yeah, my room's scarier right now. Like, there's something in my closet. And I was like, okay, well, fine. You can sleep here tonight, but tomorrow you gotta go sleep back in your room. So after that, she didn't sleep in her room anymore. She just would sleep in my room or my little brother's room. She was sleeping in my brother's room one night, and my brother had heard something in his closet. And he was like, Nicole, there's something in my closet. Like, maybe it's like a big rat or something, because it sounded like it was shuffling through his stuff. And she's like, ew, what the fuck? Like, go check. And he's like, I'm not gonna check. And right when he said, I'm not gonna check, the door started opening up. obviously he was freaked out. He's like, no, what's happening? Like, why is my stuff opening up? After it started like turning, it suddenly just like opened real fast. And they freaked out, obviously, ran to my room, and they were like, Brittany, like, there's something in my room. There's something in the closet. Can we sleep here? I was like, I don't know how you're gonna sleep, all 3 of us in here, but sure, like, you can if you want. I have weird stuff going on in my room too. I see like this dark entity and stuff. Regardless, they slept in my room that night because whatever was in the closet was more scarier than being alone, you know? So we went and told her mom the next morning, and she was like, there's nothing in this house. Y'all are watching too many ghost stories, which she's not wrong. She was just getting very irritated that every night we would wake up pretty much like screaming at this point because something happened. It got to the point where I wasn't able to sleep anymore because things just kept happening. And I told my friend one time, hey, like, this stuff is happening in my house. It's really scary. Like, and he just stops me and he's like, oh, everyone has that. You're not the only one. Well, what do you experience? He's like, shadow people all the time. Like, it's just constant. We hear voices in our house. It's not just you, it's all of Cibolo. I started doing like a little bit of research into what exactly like Cibolo was before it was Cibolo. Unsurprisingly, I found that Cibolo had Comanche tribes, and among other tribes in the town, and around, I want to say like the 1800s, a group of German settlers came and obviously did what settlers do and pushed people out of their own rightfully owned lands. Not only that, their main cash crop was cotton. Now, this is the South. There was slavery. So not only did they push out Native Americans, they brought in slaves to tend to their plantations. And that history altogether is, you know, as you can imagine, not the greatest. After finding this out, I kind of understood like why this was happening. It's kind of like karma for pretty much destroying people's lives. And once I realized this, I feel like the activity in our house got worse. One night, my sister and I were sleeping in my room, and we heard my whiteboard rip off the wall, pretty much taking off the paint. And it flew towards my bed. It like made such a loud sound that my mother woke up, and she's like, what the hell happened? And we're just like, the board, it fell off the wall, like it came towards us. And she rolled her eyes and she's like, if y'all don't stop playing around, like it's nighttime, go back to sleep. And we're just like, we're not playing around, like this is not a joke, this is real. She's like, okay, call it whatever you want to call it, but like y'all are disrupting my sleep. We obviously didn't go back to bed, and my mother was noticing things around the house at this point too, like lights turning on and off by themselves. The very last night we were there, we started hearing like growls, and my sister started hearing like someone calling her name, and it started to mimic our like voices. She had gone into upstairs for whatever reason, and she thought she heard someone calling her, and she's like, yeah, who is it? Like, what do you want? And she just kept hearing her name. She's like, what's wrong? And she like went upstairs trying to follow where it was coming from. She said it sounded like me, so she's like, Brittany, what do you want? I called from downstairs, like, what do you mean? I'm down here, like you just saw me. And she's just like, okay, that's weird. That's really weird. So at that point, my mother had started believing us, and she's like, yeah, we're packing everything up. Like, this is it, we're done. It was a very long night. We saw like figures. I saw for sure figures. There was something weird in this house. We weren't making this up. Like, this is real. This was a real thing that happened. Anyways, if you have any stories to tell, I would love to tell your stories. Or if you have any suggestions on what you would like me to cover, I am very open to them. Ghosts, cryptids, poltergeists, aliens, or conspiracies.